All right, take a look at this. Some brand new polls out showing no real political winners emerging from the fiscal cliff deal. 43% approve of the deal, 45% don't, 12% have no opinion one way or another. And when you break the numbers down, well, they're right along party lines. 2/3 of Democrats approve, 2/3 of Republicans disapprove. Well, our political insiders are here, and they don't agree with those folks at all. John Lebutillier is former Republican congressman from New York. Pat Caddell, Fox News contributor, former pollster for President Jimmy Carter. Doug Schoen, also a Fox News contributor and a former pollster for Bill Clinton. All right, let's talk winners and losers, notwithstanding those polls. Doug?
Well, the poll showed an even split, but looking as you did in depth, the Democrats approve 2-1, the Republicans object 2-1. Bottom line, that is the score. This is a huge victory for the Democrats, a huge victory for the president. It doesn't solve the problem, but it does what President Obama said he was going to do, which is raise taxes on the wealthy. Democrats are happy. Republicans got rolled.
Does Boehner have mud on his face?
Oh, he is. The Republicans got slaughtered. It was a total slaughter, despite some things I've said where someone actually wrote trying to suggest they actually got what they wanted. But look, the bigger loser was the American people by a long shot. This deal is a raping of the ordinary American by, I mean,
Why?
The special interest deal that they put together. Let me give you 2 examples. We have, or 3 examples, to show you how bad the Republicans are. The deals for extending tax breaks for corporations, for insiders, for billions and billions of dollars. Remember, it's a $41 in taxes, $1 cut in spending, if that. They just went crazy. The Republicans even screwed Republican red states. If you live in Texas, your taxes, you will be because of the alternative minimum tax, you pay 5 times more tax increase than if you live in New York. Right. They couldn't even handle protect their own people. But worse than anything is the self-dealing, both sides. Look, nobody's for cutting spending, and they're all for special interests. And the American people should be angry about this. It is impossible to believe that they did this deal.
This is the most progressive now tax system since 79, 0.7%. That's less than 1%, John. Yeah. Now pay 40% of all federal taxes.
But the big story here to me, to piggyback on what these 2 guys said, is that the Republicans who run the House of Representatives and who negotiated the deal over in the Senate with the Vice President, Republicans are the ones who allowed this to happen. They caved in. John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, is the most empty, powerless speaker in our lifetime. The night that this thing was adopted in the Senate, which was last Sunday, right away, immediately, Eric Cantor, the majority leader, announces, I'm against the deal. I'm against the deal. So we have the leader, Boehner, is for it. The next guy in charge is against it.
Right.
There's no leadership inside the Republican caucus. They have fallen apart and allowed this thing to happen.
And Doug, in terms of spending, Congress made it worse. They added $4 trillion to the deficit.
$4 trillion. And the other thing, to play off Pat's point, is there was nothing done about carried interest, which is the favored tax treatment for hedge fund and private equity guys. And bottom line, while the tax code is progressive, and it's gotten more progressive, it's on working people that it's become more progressive rather than the ultra-rich.
Yes, take this. Look, for President Obama goes around saying, we really got the millionaires and billionaires. Carried interest. They pay 20%, Warren Buffett, 20% tax rate on what is real income. It's unbelievable. All of these deals, the American people are getting screwed, and they're all getting tax increases.
By the way, the big question to me is the Republicans had a principle. We might not agree with it, but their principle was it's bad for the economy to raise tax rates on anybody, rich or not. Okay, that's their position. If they believe in that, why give that up without getting something in return for it?
So wait a minute. So in other words, the deal did nothing about the deficit, nothing about spending, nothing about the debt ceiling, and nothing about the fiscal cliff.
Yeah. Right.
Nothing.
And it gave President Obama more political juice and energy. So he's going forward, and he's saying he's not negotiating about the debt ceiling or anything else.
And McConnell, by the way, who I think may be a clone from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, whose controller is Joe Biden. goes out there for the third year in a row, at the last minute gives a deal that screws the country, his own party. And this man is reelected after losing two Senate elections. It's unbelievable. What they do is, none of them in Washington understand this. They're both spending parties, and they're basically both in the pockets of
Let me
special
throw up
interest.
the Rasmussen polls up here, because spending cuts should be considered in every federal government program. 62% agree with that, and yet many of them don't think it's actually going to happen.
Well, it's not going to happen based on what we just saw. Pat's right. Nobody's talking about spending cuts, Greg. Nobody's put a plan on the table like Bowles-Simpson to cut spending and to restore economic growth.
If they couldn't do it, Pat, in a year and a half, they're not going to be able to do it in 2 months.
They don't care to do it. That's what we've learned from this. Mort Zuckerman wrote out on the 28th a piece, which I just read today, and he's an expert on the economy. Do you know the unfunded liability, the unfunded federal liability is $87 trillion. It's 550% of GDP, and we're just getting deeper and deeper. It's not just the actual.
Do you guys feel inspired? You all saw Lincoln, the movie, and would you like to compare to another American politician?
Well, I would say this, Greg. I saw the movie, and Abe Lincoln showed leadership, willingness to stand up for principle, compassion, taking risk, the opposite of Al Gore with his deal with Al Jazeera, selling his soul.
Yeah, but he's making $100 million bucks.
And he got the deal done before the end of the year to get lower
With
taxes.
the network, by the way, that was the mouthpiece for Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, and the biggest anti-Israel mouthpiece in the world.
And he says we share the values. Their two networks share the same values. Let me tell you something about the difference in Lincoln. Lincoln was willing and paid the price to save the country. I want to ask you a simple question, ask the audience. How many of you believe that these people in Washington put the country and its future first?
Pat, I don't think anybody thinks that the country was put first in this deal or has for a long time.
And that's why our politics is about to explode.
All right. Fox News learning that the president, perhaps as early as tomorrow, will be nominating former Senator Chuck Hagel, a Republican, to be his next Secretary of Defense. Given the things that Hagel has said about the so-called Jewish lobby, about gays, about Hamas, about Hezbollah, is this going to be a bruising battle?
Absolutely bruising, Greg. I mean, these are huge issues. The Republicans, through Mitch McConnell today, signaled that they are going to look very, very closely at the nomination, which is code for expect most, if not all, Republicans to vote against him. But Democrats in states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Florida, tough for them to support Hagel given his positions on Iran and Israel. And Greg, I think this is going to be another chaotic fight. We're looking at something that could be like John Tower.
Yes,
Really?
John Tower, and remember who
was
defeated
rejected
him? By Republicans. They controlled the
Yeah.
Senate then because they knew better. You've got not only the Democrats in states, as Doug described, the Northeast, you have Mary Landrieu in Louisiana, a hawkish state, Mark Pryor in Arkansas. They're going to vote for this guy who is basically for unilateral.
Why would the president nominate Chuck
Because
Hagel?
it's his worldview, number one. And basically, he likes Hagel, and his attitude is, I'm going to get you for Susan Rice. I'm going to shove this down. He is really overplaying it. This could blow up.
Well, I think the real first reason he was looking at Hagel a month ago, and we've heard his name over the last couple of years, is he's a Republican.
A Trojan horse.
Yeah, he's a Republican who agrees that we need to cut defense spending. So they want the face of defense cuts to be a Republican, not a Democrat. That's number one.
He's not going to be real popular over the Pentagon if he
But
gets
here's the thing. Let me ask these guys. Has the president picked up the phone and called Harry Reid and said, can we get this guy confirmed?
I don't think so. I think this is a fight they want because if you looked at Leon Panetta, the outgoing Secretary of Defense, he said sequestration is a disaster. Hagel has said the opposite. Hagel's doing the work
Hagel's
of the
not
White
only
House.
weak on Iran and other things, he is against any intervention anywhere and head of the
Iran
and
and
he's not
Afghanistan.
qualified to be Secretary.
Speaking
In the
of
Washington
which,
Post
let me
last month.
segue back to the sequestration. $110 billion is going to happen in the next 2 months. All they did was kick the can down the road on the fiscal cliff. So what's the president going to do? He's going to get out and campaign now. What do you make of that?
Well, he is going to get out and campaign for more spending, for continuing the right to borrow, extending the debt limit. And bottom line, he's going to campaign against the sequestration because there is no Republican plan, and both sides, Boehner and the president, have said
And
no
Pat,
more negotiations.
the president doesn't want to negotiate.
No, of course not. He wants to raise. He'll go out and say, we need more revenue, except for my friends, the people I protect.
Is this a divisive president?
This is the most, as Doug and I have written 2 years ago, the most divisive president in history. The only way he can govern is dividing. He likes doing this. He doesn't like being president. And sooner or later, even when the Washington Post opposes Hagel, one of these things is going to blow up on him.
But he's going up against a confused opponent. The Republican Party,
Midgets.
they
Political
don't
midgets.
have a position to stand up on if it comes to the sequestration.
I have to ask you, John, you've been in the Republican caucus. When you were there Republican strategies and messages that the party had to communicate? Because I don't see one now.
Well, there were in my day.
That's what I'm talking about.
Now we know that in these conference meetings, every now and then they bring a pollster in who advises them on what to do, and they reject the pollster's opinion, and they go off this.
Listen, when
cliff.
you got the House Speaker John Boehner, who allegedly is not even talking to the majority leader, Eric Cantor, you got a real problem.
And
in
he's
your
not talking
Republican
to
Party.
the Senate Majority Leader either.
Yeah, of course not.
And the president's
nobody's
not even
talking to
talking
anybody.
to
On the night of the vote, the night of the fiscal cliff vote, he couldn't get on the phone. Boehner and Cantor couldn't talk to
I'm
each other
thinking
on
you
the
three
phone.
guys could solve the problem.
In about half
and
an
you
hour.
give me a
Absolutely.
big red ink pen, I could probably help you.
We all could.
We all could.
All
We
right.
could do what's good for
So
the
good,
country.
the American people.
Doug Schoen, Caddell, John Lebutillier, good to see you guys.
Thank
You
you.
can
Great
catch
to see you.
more of the Political Insiders every Monday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, live.foxnews.com, and they'll be back here, of course, next Sunday. You can also follow them on Twitter at FN Insiders. Jamie?